if you're thinking about buying a classic car, and maybe you're thinking about a project, and a project involves fabrication, which means that you're going to have to remove metal, make metal, or possibly replace metal that's already preformed to put your car back together. And one of the most common problems that cars have these days in the classic cars of the 60s is floors. They rot out from the water leaking in through the windshields. And here we go with a lake at the bottom. It sits out in somebody's backyard for a while. You take all the stuff out of it, get it sandblasted, and you got cheese down there. I mean, it's just like Swiss cheese everywhere, holes. So you got to cut it all out, and then you got to weld it back in. And you think, that's just too big a task for me. I don't really even know how to weld. But, you know, when I started doing this 20, 25 years ago, really working hard on classic cars, I took some courses and I started watching the internet and watch other people weld. And I've learned to weld pretty well, and I put in a lot of floors myself, and I fixed a lot of parts, and I continue to weld in my shop because it's a lot of fun. So what I decided to do was to buy a really good welder, a MIG and a TIG. So this is referred to as a MIG welder, and this is referred to as a TIG welder. And I started out with a MIG, and I learned how to MIG weld very well and put in a lot of floors, a lot of spot welds. And then I moved to a TIG and learned how to TIG weld, and I really enjoy doing that. So first things first, if you decide to buy a welder, you're going to have a helmet. These are called self-darkening helmets, meaning that you can set them so that when the welder flashes, it'll actually darken this for you so that you don't have to think that some of the older helmets you had to flip down the lid. This is all there, and it can help you, and some of them are even now oral where you can say something inside and it'll adjust your setting. So you need a good helmet, and you're going to need a set of welding gloves so that you don't burn your hands when you reach over to touch something for the first time, which we all do. So those are two things you're going to need to do. Now this welder is a water-cooled TIG welder. That means that you actually weld by controlling the heat. Here's your ground cable that attaches to ground the piece that you're working on. And then you have a pedal up here that you use to operate by pushing it with your foot. And then here's the torch. The torch has a small electrode tip in it right here that you have to clean and sharpen so that you get good clean welds. And you operate by holding a wire welding rod, and you hold this rod in one hand and feed it in to this torch as you're welding. So it's kind of a dual operation, and you also have to learn how to push the pedal with your foot. And it really seems like it's complicated, but once you start practicing, it's really a lot of fun, and it's something you can get very good at. The disadvantage to this welder is that it won't reach inside of a car when you're doing the floors, because it's kind of stationary and the leaves aren't as long, and it's just a little more cumbersome. So I keep this for a lot of the bench welding stuff that I like to do. But it's really a good welder, and I like Miller. You know, I bought a really good brand. I think Miller is good. I've really enjoyed it, and you have to learn to weld up, meaning you have to get better at it. But as you get better, you'll appreciate the fact that you bought a really good welder. This is a Miller Synchro-Wave 250DX, and it also has Pulse. Pulse helps you weld a little bit better and helps you make your welds clean on the heavier material. Now for the other welder, this is a MIG welder. That means that there is a torch head like this, and you pull the trigger, and it's called wire feed, and you can see that wire coming out as I pull the trigger, and that's what you hold as you're welding, and around the outside of it, it supplies an inert gas to keep the weld clean. And here's your ground lead. All you really have to learn on the MIG is how to set it. This is a later model one that is a little more sophisticated. My other one just has a couple of numbers, your volts and your amps here. So as you adjust it right here for the thickness of the metal and your wire speed, then you can learn to weld with this, and you'll really enjoy MIG welding because it's so easy to pick up. It's something you can practice and learn how to do and become very proficient at it. You can do spot welds, you can do stitch welds, you can do seam welds with this. It's a great welder, and this also is a Miller, and it happens to be a Millermatic 255. Now that means it will weld just about anything in terms of thickness,
And I really enjoy this. I think buying a really good welder will make a big difference. It's hard to learn with an inadequate welder. Buy these two pieces and enjoy welding and putting your car together. I'm Barry Wilson. I'm with Wilson Auto Repair. I've been 40 years of doing this in Wilson Auto Repair in Garland, Texas. If you want to see more of the tools and the suggestions and helpful hints we have for you repairing your cars, go to my website, wilsonauto.com.